All right, I'm with Daniel McClellan. He's a Hebrew scholar, Bible study student. He has just received your master's, correct?
I've just completed my master's. I won't get the degree until next year. Oxford likes to push that off.
Feel free to talk loud because this echoes. So you've completed your master's at Oxford.
I've completed my master's at Oxford. I won't receive the actual diploma until probably next May.
But we know you have the brains, so it doesn't take the paper.
Right. I've already received a confirmation of completion. I got all my grades in.
Awesome. Okay, so you going to pursue your PhD?
Ultimately, yeah. I've got another master's degree to do, and then I'll be applying to more PhD programs. And
another master's. You're going to do 2 masters.
I'm going to have 2 master's degrees.
How old are you?
I just turned 30.
Oh man, to be able to have spent my youth as good as you are, that's awesome. I have talked to you and with you, and I've had to side with you because of my meager studies compared to what you're doing on this theme of the Council of the Gods on the internet, when it seems like some people just simply disagree with our reading of the Bible as having a plurality of gods, our definition of the biblical word Elohim, the Hebrew word, and some of the Psalms, and some of the information in Isaiah, and even Genesis now, I guess, has been interpreted by some scholars to have something to do with some Council of the Gods. There's some theme there. Mm-hmm. And I found that you really do like this topic. I mean, you've done some work on this.
Yeah.
Was your first master's degree on the Council of the Gods?
No, the degree was actually a master's in Jewish studies, and my emphasis was the Greco-Roman period. The master's thesis that I wrote was entitled Antianthropomorphism in the Forlaga of LXX Exodus. And
now explain that for the viewers. What's anti-anthropomorphism?
Anti-anthropomorphism is the tendency to mitigate the presentation of God in human form. So this is, there's a very common theory that the translators of the Septuagint tried to hide notions of God's visibility and corporeality in their translation into Greek. So in many places in the Hebrew where it mentions God's hands, God's eyes, God's feet, so-and-so saw God, in the Greek those things are removed or changed, so they don't evince this idea that God has a body. And so what I did is I went through and I actually showed that in many instances this anti-anthropomorphic tendency is found in the Forlaga, the Hebrew parent text, not the translation. So it's not the translator who's doing this. He's translating the text faithfully. It's a redactor or some kind of scribe prior to the translation who's changed it. And my theory is that the scribe prior to the translation and the translator had 2 different opinions on how God could be represented.
Oh, how interesting. Yeah.
So I say that the Hebrew scribe did not like the idea of God being visible to humanity. The Greek translator didn't mind the idea that God could be seen by humanity. What he didn't like was the idea that God could come down and stand before humanity, could physically visit humanity. And I go through to show that in the instances where we can tell that it is the actual Greek translator changing the text, these are all instances where it's representing God standing in front of somebody. And so I'm saying that they just had 2 different theological perspectives. And so
interesting. So you think it began with the early Hebrew redactors, and the Greek translation appears to be a pretty faithful rendition of the Hebrew then?
Yeah, that's the direction that Septuagint studies is headed in now, is the idea that the translators were actually fairly faithful to their parent text, and they didn't deviate very often. But if we use that paradigm, then it means that the places where they did change things are even more important. And I'll be presenting a paper in Atlanta this year about changes in the book of Deuteronomy in the Greek translation, and why those are really significant for studying the perspective on the nature of deity and of multiple deities.
In Atlanta, the SBL?
Yeah.
The Society for Biblical Literature, yeah. You've told me to try to get there just for the book sale, if nothing else.
Yeah,
I'd love
really
to
nice.
if I could. My wife would clobber me for that. So, In the course of getting a master's, you've learned Hebrew, obviously some Greek.
Right.
What other languages do you find favorable to your studies?
At Brigham Young University, I also took a semester of Aramaic and 2 semesters of Ugaritic. So
They teach Ugaritic at BYU.
Paul Hoskison teaches it. Yeah, they also do, I believe this year he tried to do Akkadian. And then Christian Heel does Syriac, which is a language I have a little bit of experience with just from working on the Biblia Hebraica Quinta for Donald Perry. So I've had to teach myself a little bit of Syriac. And then I haven't done much Egyptian, but they also teach...
they teach the Egyptian also. Huh?
Yeah.
So who teaches the Aramaic?
The Aramaic was actually Stephen Riggs.
Really? Yeah. He also teaches Hebrew too, though.
Yeah. He teaches Hebrew.
Good.
So
they're related languages.
And
pretty much.
Well, you have to have a certain level of Hebrew in order to take the Aramaic. And then we went through all the biblical Aramaic texts and then translated some of the Elephantine papyri. So.
Oh, how fun! Crowley's? Crowley's elephant? No.
Well, no, not the ones he translated, but there were we had a collection of manuscripts.
The text. I guess the Ancient Studies Center at BYU has really picked up steam. They have a screaming collection of texts, from what I've heard. So I know their Egyptian stuff's fabulous. So.
And what Christian Heel is doing is also very important. Everybody at Oxford knew who he was.
What is he doing?
He is digitalizing as much of the Syriac corpus that exists everywhere as he can. So he's going to the Vatican and photographing Syriac texts and manuscripts and just trying to get them wherever he can find them.
Now, why is Syriac such an important language? What documents do we have that's been written in Syriac?
Syriac is most important for early Christian studies. The Eastern Christians, the ones who lived east of Jerusalem, in as far east as Babylon and Edessa and other places like that. And they actually still speak Syriac in some places. And so for Christian studies from 3rd, 4th century on.
But they're in the East. They're the Eastern Christians. How interesting.
So those are important documents for that era in Christian history.
So what's your second master's going to be on, Dan?
Second master's is a Master of Arts in Biblical Studies at Trinity Western University, just outside of Vancouver, British Columbia. Now I have a research assistantship with Peter Flint. Where I'll be working
he's a good guy.
Yeah, I'll be working on Dead Sea Scrolls stuff with him. And then Martin Abegg will also be there, and I hope to have his help. And another scholar named Dirk Buckner, who does more Septuagint stuff. And I'd like to do my next master's thesis on Qumran and a little bit on the Septuagint. Basically what I want to talk about is Qumran's perspective on multiple deities, because Qumran inherits a biblical corpus that references other deities numerous times. And if you look through the Qumran text, you find a lot of references to the sons of the gods, to other deities, but what they do is treat them as angels. There's a part where it references Genesis 6:1, where it says the sons of God came down and chose
the Giants
wives.
chapter.
At Qumran, it calls them angels. And so...
that's interesting.
And there are other places...
So they're demoting the god, so to speak, you think?
So to speak, yeah. And so...
so what was their point, do you feel? Why would they do that?
My opinion, and it's what I want to work towards in a PhD dissertation, is that this is a campaign toward promoting Jehovah, Elohim, as a species-unique deity, to quote Michael Heiser.
Yeah.
Before this time period, I don't believe that he was viewed as species-unique, as ontologically distinct. But I think with the conflation of the B'nai Elohim, the sons of God, with the angels, what they do is kind of cut them off from Jehovah and kind of separate them off into another taxonomy and say that, they're